Hi, welcome to Cryptid Wilderness Research. I am CWR team member Daniel Becker up here in Alaska. Joining me, as always, from Quincy, Washington, my fellow host, Matt Slater.
Hello.
Joining us tonight, first, one of the hosts from Ancient Tracks, a Beast Inquiry from the great state of Oklahoma. Kim, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. And of course, CWR also joining us, CWR team member, author, Bigfoot researcher, one of the field generals in Bigfoot research, William Lunsford.
Hey, everybody from LA, and that's Lower Arkansas. Glad to be here with everybody. Look forward to doing this on Saturday night. The only thing better than this is being in the woods talking about it. So glad to be here. Thank y'all for being here as well.
That's right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys taking the time to join us. So wanted to talk a little bit tonight about vocalizations and your experience with vocalizations in the field. So William, why don't you get us started and talk a little bit about the importance of vocalizations in research and some of your experiences that you've had.
Okay. I'm glad to do that. Thank you, Daniel. Again, thank you to everybody who's here and also to our service people who have laid down their lives so that we can do what we do. Thank you so much. And our first responders. One thing that's important in any relationship is whether you're Bigfoot researching, whether it's in human relationships, even relationships with your animals, the ability to communicate. And if you're a Bible believer, you go back to the Tower of Babel. And what did God do? He confounded the languages so the people couldn't communicate. Well, it's the same way with all our animal research here. Whenever we do Bigfoot down there, Bigfoot does have a way to communicate. They have their very own language. I know you're thinking, golly, man, how do you know that? Well, we've had several people that have had recordings that have been submitted there. But then there's one man here I'd like to make everybody aware with. There's a man named Scott Nelson. Scott is an ex-Navy linguist there. He intercepted languages and stuff, and he was actually able to interpret some of these languages. Well, Scott, I think it's about 2008, he had a son who was, his teacher asked him to do a project on either Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, or something other like that. So the son got stuck with Bigfoot. And so Scott was not a believer at that time. I don't know if he is right now. I've never had the privilege yet of meeting him. But anyway, so his son was sitting there and they got started. And with his dad being a linguist from the Navy, U.S. Navy, for several years there, he said he's made a career in the Navy. So I don't know how many years that was. But anyway, with that right there. And so he sit there and he played some of the audio, and all of a sudden he goes, my gosh, son, with him being an expert in language, he said, that's a language. And it's actually a syllabic language that he could pick up. We have something that's called the samurai chatter. A lot of people talk about Bigfoot doing samurai chatter, and it's kind of like some of the old movies that we see there with Godzilla. Rah, 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 rah. Well, whenever he slowed these audios down to play through, he could actually pick up these languages. So he didn't just do it through himself, but he did it with other experts as well. And so it is with him, these people that you think about being Bigfoot researchers or Bigfoot commentators, folks, these guys are good. We're not crazy. When you got somebody that's got the expertise like that, another man who did 8 fingerprints, Jimmy Chilcott from down here, real close to Houston, Texas. These people are very smart with what they do. It's not just something they have made up. And this deal that Scott came through there will begin to prove that Bigfoot actually has its own language. He actually started there. There's a guy named Ron Moorhead, if anybody there has heard of what's called the Sierra sounds. And they recorded that up there. I think it was at their deer camp or something other like that, where they were hunting up there. But they recorded that, and so he was able to listen to that. And so when you have somebody like Scott, and then Ron, who will vouch for their authenticity, I can actually vouch for one. If he's not telling the truth about that, people say, "Well, what are you gonna do if that proven to be fake?" I don't base my research based on that or with the Pat Gimlin film. But one thing I do know, my son and I were actually deer hunting a little town about 25 miles from here. And we actually heard with both of our own ears live what's one of the Sierra sounds. It's called the Sierra growl. And it's evidently they're angry with each other fighting. And so all of a sudden, when me and my son are sitting there in the woods, we got, and then it starts again. And like I said, it's not a growl. It's a Sierra blast because it's so doggone loud. And we quiet there within a period of about a minute. and it just shook us both to our core. So in order, like I said, for Bigfoot to be able to communicate, they don't always use that. We've heard of the Ohio howl, and the Ohio howl, if nobody knows what that is, that's also called the bell tone howl. But that Ohio,
Mhm.
sometime if you're experienced, if you have any experience with the show, watching Finding Bigfoot, there's a man named James Fay, a guy who they call him affectionately Bobo. Bobo tends to do this howl. He starts out. It sounds almost like an air raid siren or somewhat like an ambulance right there. Well, that's called the Ohio howl. And folks, I've heard that too. So that's two that we have right there. So talking about this Ohio howl, and it's a way that they communicate. It's not always a blast. Sometimes it's a series of short chatters. Daniel and I heard some babies there a couple of years ago. They're standing to the side, actually doing what was sounding like these samurai chatter. And so we were sitting there just watching. And as we're sitting there staring, Daniel's got the picture there. He's behind me, and all of a sudden we look up there, and he sends me the pictures that we're looking at, and all of a sudden there's a Bigfoot standing about 40 feet in front of us, hiding behind a tree. So the doggone languages that they use, like I said, they don't, just like I don't use the same language with my wife. I don't use the same language with my dog, but I recognize I've got 8 dogs. I recognize which of my dogs is barking. I tend to realize that which of theirs is a bark of concern, whether it's a bark if there's a booger out there, things like that. Well, Bigfoot has to have the same to communicate, and sometimes they do it with us. Daniel and I were lucky enough a couple of years ago to experience one. Blew us right off the map. We had a good day, researching. That was right after we're talking about seeing the picture or getting the one behind the tree that's looking at us, and we go on maybe 50 or 60 yards up a hill, and all of a sudden we get just blasted. And it's with such not just volume but authority from the woods, like when it was like, okay, I'm announcing to whoever's over here from every animal from here to probably 10 miles away that there's somebody here in our patch of woods. And so I tend to believe that's what it was, that they were actually announcing to each other, hey, we got an intruder here. And then I experienced it, Daniel experienced it. It was nothing that neither one of us were experiencing or expecting. I'm sorry, it is when we're expecting, all of a sudden it does, and it just stops. You're like, what are we going to do? We're going to wait and see what it does first, and then
Right.
we're going to do some prayers. The second thing we're going to do is run. But no, but it is. Bigfoot is has their own way to communicate, and it's not just with those howls and stuff. But they do have, and they have to have it just like we as people do, and we're communicating within their structures there, within their troop.
So, William, both you and Kim have the fortune of being in Bigfoot Central when it comes to sightings, vocalizations. One, you're in Arkansas, Kim's in Oklahoma, right next door to each other. And so, Kim, what have you heard about vocalizations in Oklahoma? And have you heard any yourself?
Well, there was one that we talked on the last episode when I came on. Um, it was the owl that turned into the angry monkey. But I was also a little further west in Oklahoma, and I had pitched a tent in front of a friend's house, one of our teammates, and we were out at his house, and he lives close to town, but he's out in the country. Nobody is in front of him, and across the street, across the dirt road, one night when I was going to sleep in the tent, I heard a baby crying. There's no cows, there's nothing over there, but it sounded like a baby, and it was really creepy to hear that. But it cried twice. That was it, and there was nothing else. The next morning, I go over there. I thought there were cows, even though it didn't sound like a cow. It sounded like a baby. I was trying to see what it could have been, and there was nothing over there. There's no cows in that pasture. I don't know what it was, but it definitely sounded like a baby.
Copy that. Matt Slater up in Quincy, Washington.
We do have a video. If you'd like to play that now, that we can bring you a vocalization right here on the video.
Okay. That's a great audio.
Yeah, you can hear
So,
the
William, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
you can hear the man in the boat vocalizing to try and draw out a response, and then about 2/3 of the way down the video, you can hear the creature responding to him. That's pretty amazing.
So, William, talk about what we're seeing in that video a little bit, and tell us about that location.
Okay. Man, I'm glad to do that. Like I said, that's a place that's called Mercer Bayou. Mercer Bayou is world famous for having Bigfoot sightings. Nearly anybody who is affiliated with any research group, when they come to Arkansas to research around there, around a place called Smith Park, Sulphur River Bottoms, tends to go down there to this place right here. And it's right there off a place actually that's off of Mercer Bayou on the south end, kind of almost towards Louisiana. Well, they get down there, and this is my buddy, and this is not his first experience with that Bigfoot down there. There's also a friend of mine named Doyle Holmes, who at this very same place here. Y'all will see him sometimes on Monsters and Mysteries in America, Ozarks edition, about him, wherever he's out there in a canoe and one of these things he sees it splashing water up onto the bank like it's trying to gather food and things like that, and then it actually throws a big old log at him. Well, this is the same location right there. It's a very I've had encounters down. I've actually seen picked up one time when we were down there, and the water was down. We actually picked up the tracks of an alligator, and pretty soon we picked up the tracks of a Bigfoot behind the alligator. Then we picked up just the Bigfoot tracks, and the Bigfoot was about 300 pounds heavier than he was, and the alligator tracks disappeared. And that's the second experience we've had with Bigfoot. Looks to be actually capturing and eating an alligator. So that's one of those places. It's just classic. And they're on the big hill. It's called the Mounds, and right there where the creek comes through. It's actually, if y'all ever saw the episode of Finding Bigfoot, where it's called Return to Boggy Creek, where Renee was there and she had something up on the hill. Well, that's exactly where it was, right there in the very same place. So this is my buddy Randy Crawford. He's got his nephew with him. And so while they're down there, and he'd been having a little activity down there, so that's the reason he's back there again. When he does, I think this thing recognizes that he has his little nephew with him, because all of a sudden, what you hear Randy do, the first one with the whoo, was trying to, again, as they said, trying to get him to respond. He's already had one vocalization from this Bigfoot, and so he's trying to get him to respond. And then as he goes on there, then he gets this second response. And then there's another response that we didn't get there, but he actually said that the Bigfoot almost seemed frustrated that it wasn't able to communicate with him while he's down. He's in the boat. He's in the water right there. Bigfoot's over there on just the other side, not too far down, kind of stuck into the brush. And he actually, saw the shadow of the thing moving through there. And so it's trying to communicate, but he said it also had that frustrated sound. You hear it, it kind of sounded like Chewbacca there at the end. But folks, that ain't no bear. That's not nobody in a costume. He's down there. This thing's so far into the woods, you got to come towards town to go deer hunting, man. And so this is an authentic audio that you can get. And also there's a movie called Boggy Creek Monster. It's actually a documentary done by Seth Breedlove, and you can hear at the end of this show where, again, my friend Doyle Holmes is down there. You can hear one actually vocalized down there on this audio as part of the movie right there, and it's in the very same place as what we have this recording made right here. So very interesting place. And again, when Bigfoot, they tend to be territorial. They know their area. They have their sleeping areas, feeding areas, breeding areas, and all other things like that. And so there's the fact that my buddy was able to get that recording. He called me right there from the water and sent that video. So I mean, it was very timely. So it's not a hoax. I wish he could have got the rest of it, but sometimes you're having to deal with like cell phone equipment, and you don't have the right equipment to actually pick up as what you would like to have. But
So again, William, you being in Arkansas, and Kim, you being in Oklahoma. I remember on the last trip that I had out with Will on that border area. We just we're in some real interesting country. With it, literally goes from swamps to sloughs to farm country to, I mean, it's just everywhere. And but in Oklahoma, where you are, Kim, what's the landscape like?
It goes from farmland, ranch land, oil, to prairies to the mountains. We got a little bit of everything. I don't think we have any swamps. But yeah.
So, in the times that you've been out, has the activity fluctuated, or do you find areas that are generally pretty active?
So my friend's house that we were at, he is in the central western part of Oklahoma. And he has a lot of activity. However, it comes and it goes. But he's out in the middle of nowhere, but it does follow the Canadian River. He is on the Canadian River, or not far. I think he's about 5 miles from the Canadian. But he says that the activity is pretty a lot of activity at certain times of the year, and then others it just goes dead. And I've heard that a lot. However, we had Mary Fabian on, and she's in Pennsylvania. And I asked her, she had one that kept coming up to her house, and I think he would make a visit every 2 to 3 weeks. And I asked her, I said, is it always 2 to 3 weeks? And she said yes, that he was always around. And a couple of times there was a couple of them that show up, but basically he was there all year round. So I don't know if it's different regions that they have to move in and out of. I don't know. I've heard both.
I would like to acknowledge something that Kim just said here, talking about hearing this baby crying. Folks, there's something y'all can look up when we get off this podcast right here. You can look up what's called crybaby bridges. Now,
Oh
that
yeah.
laying something to Kim, she mentioned the Canadian River, which Bigfoot tends to follow the
Hmm.
rivers and the creek. But these crybaby bridges, some people say, and I tend to think maybe it's true around here, that you heard the trolls that come from underneath the bridge there, and all of a sudden they are. I tend to think sometimes these were Bigfoot there. It's just a place that they stay. I've actually found tracks going underneath a bridge down there to around a place called Days Creek, where I had within a mile of where I had my very first sighting. But these crybaby bridges, you can look this up and it'll give you some locations. And boy, when you go to one, there's a lot of people there like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's a baby crying. Well, one thing that Bigfoot tend to do, that's another vocalization that they make. They tend to do that, or they tend to make one of my real good friends, a very, very good researcher. He is the editor of Texas Fishing Game magazine, and his name's Chester Moore. And one of Chester's favorite calls is to do the same thing, like the quote kitty cat call, or like that baby call. And so whenever it does, they tend to respond to him in that way. So again, acknowledging some of what Kim said, that's something that tends to be, because Chester's way down there in Beaumont, Texas. Here I am right here in Arkansas. There she is there in Oklahoma. And so that's something that you can check that up and see. We've got several around here, and believe me, when you go out there, you're going to hear something, and it's not,
Yeah.
not baby birds out there. You're in something
Yeah.
can't quite understand. So I wanted to throw that in the acknowledgement of what she has experienced right there.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had forgotten when I heard that baby cry, and I went because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was a Bigfoot or not, but I realized, and when I started researching that, there's crybaby bridges all over the place. And yeah, we were close to the Canadian. So,
One of the first things that you taught me, William, in the field, you and Stephen, was learning the sounds of the forest and learning the sounds of your environment. Because when I first got down there on my first research trip with you and Stephen, I was kind of listening to the sounds of the forest, and I would hear things that I would think were a Sasquatch, and you would immediately educate me and say, no, that's not a Bigfoot, that's a fox, that's a fox, or that's a coyote. And so learning the sounds of your research area and learning the sounds of your environment, I got a real education on that from you and Stephen, which I very much appreciate. And I noticed that down there in the South at nighttime, the woods are a lot more louder
Yeah.
than I expected. Like up here in the North, you don't hear all that stuff. It's just almost silent sometimes. you might hear a lone wolf someplace, but down where you guys are, holy moly,
There's a bunch.
it might be pitch black, but it is completely alive.
Yeah, if you don't have a prehistoric buzzer going off, some insect, there's critters all over the place.
We do want to ask you guys a couple questions about Bigfoots in that southern area there. So I'll toss the ball over to Matt.
Yeah, just a couple of general questions. In your opinions as field researchers in your areas, in general, what do you think that the Sasquatch in those areas eat?
Go ahead, Kim. I'll let you start.
For sure, deer. Um,
Deer.
I think they eat vegetation. I mean, um, omnivores, whatever they can find. Probably, I don't know. Whatever they can find.
Creatures of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As long as they don't
That's
start
it.
trying to eat balding former UPS men, I'm okay with it.
I think they steal deer too from hunters. I think that I've heard so many stories of hunters losing their deer and know exactly saw it fall and everything. And 15, 20 minutes later, when they go to get it, it's gone.
Yeah, I've heard that
It's
too.
gone.
Just like Kim said, man, I know of probably 10 accounts now. I've heard of 3 within about the last 18 months there. Men like myself, including I've had it happen to me where they come and they get your deer and they take off. They definitely eat deer. As I mentioned a while ago, they eat alligators. They'll eat
Mm.
turtles. One of the first places we found 50 what's called sliders or painted turtle shells. Their shells are about like this right here, but we found 50 of them over there stacked up. None of the hinges were cracked or anything, and it looked like they had just taken their nails. They actually have nails in there, and just ripped the meat out. And so they were just thrown over kind of in a pile or a stack, as well as about 200 what's called blood pincher crawfish, the red and black ones there. They grow to be about 8 inches long here. On the average down here, we found a bunch of those shells over like broken up Christmas decorations, like your Christmas tree fell over right there. So I know they eat that. Again, roadkill. They'll eat roadkill. They are very much opportunists, just when you're out there in the woods like that. So they'll eat snakes. My buddy Randy Crawford, the man who sent us that video a while ago, or the one that we saw a while ago, actually had one down there. And he went down there. He and I had a bear. We told him it was a bear. We told the story. It was actually a Bigfoot. But we went down there to where we had told these folks that we'd had a bear crossing. Well, this Bigfoot was actually there, and we heard him that one night. Randy comes back the next day, and whenever he does, he's walking back down there to where the area was. There's a big mud puddle. Whenever he comes back by this mud puddle, laid right out there for him, or for him to step on, is half of a cottonmouth snake right there. It had actually looked like it had bit it into and laid it there for Randy as a gift. So they'll eat snakes, they'll eat rodents. There's a lot of them that are seen around hay down here. With this is being an agrarian society down here, a lot of them around the hay fields, eating the mice and things like that right there. They just about whatever they can eat, they'll do it, and I guess that's just part of being a wild creature. We find some dead animals otherwise there in the woods that I don't know. They don't appear to have eaten on them. They surely appear to have gotten them out of their territory, like they were in competition for their food. They eat fish. Like I said, I've actually baited them in with abalone. I've baited them in with sardines and things like that. And boy, they love peanut butter and they love candy bars. So I said they're actually a very, very, but they're very intelligent, man. I mean, just super intelligent. But when they don't know where their next meal comes from, but they also have eating areas and they also have bedding areas, and they might pick up something on the way from one to the other. But when they tend to go look around there for food, then like I said, they're gonna to be in that one area there, and they've got a certain method with which they hunt. So Bigfoot is very much an opportunist. And sometimes I'm not hungry, but I might drive by McDonald's. Well, I'm gonna slip in there and get me some, and they're the same way. Sometimes I don't want that full meal, but just something just enough to kind of get me tided over. So they do. They're very, very. I mean, what else can hold on to a 7-foot alligator and kill it? And then I've got the pictures there. I showed them to Daniel where we have the skeleton is like 5 foot long here. It looks like a xylophone there there's no meat left on the bones. But we've also got 2 patches of what's called scutes, the squares that you see on alligators' back, right there at the same area. And whenever me and my son found that right there, I was joking with him. I said, man, Bigfoot's done walked over and got that alligator. He'd been there for us for probably 6 or 7 years. Well, he wasn't there. We saw a trail going through the moss. Sure enough, 3 days later, we find where that Bigfoot skeleton is and the skews. So Bigfoot tends to he'll get in your doggone vegetable garden. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you remember the show Harry and the Hendersons, where he's in that lady's flower bed or whatever it is, there's a lot of wisdom in that too. So just whatever they have a chance to eat on, they'll do it. And I'm sure the babies know the mothers tend to be anatomically correct. I'm sure they have mother's milk nursing and everything else like that too. So.
And you mentioned gardens. That's actually one of the first things that got me interested in Sasquatch. My grandmother, who grew up in the hollers of Kentucky, right across the Ohio River, she told me a story about a Sasquatch that had come and was stealing vegetables out of the neighbors' gardens. And you actually, in your book, Searching for the Unfindable, My Quest for the Arkansas Bigfoot, you actually have a chapter in there. It's actually chapter 11 that says what's on the menu.
That's it.
What's on the menu. So you talk about things like this in your book here, and which, and do you guys think that it varies from northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere as far as dietary?
Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah. Oh, I think they eat whatever is available. I don't know that it would matter. I know down here they probably get a little more pork,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I just maybe they eat more berries up north. I don't know. I think that they do just whatever they can find, they're going to eat it.
They're going to kill hogs down here, man, like it's nobody's business. Matt, you ever
Yeah.
experienced that up there where you're at up there? The hogs are starting to spread up there. Then people find the one time I found 5 piled up into a pile down there, and not too far off the banks of what I called you a while ago about Mercer Bio, and the legs have been broken and everything. Do y'all have them up there in Washington as well, or?
Not that I'm aware of. And over in my area of Washington, it's actually very dry out here. It's a high plateau kind of desert sort of situation in the rain shadow of the Cascades. So there's not a lot of ground cover for something large like hog.
Yeah.
We do get. There's actually been bobcat over here. There's been actual mountain lions sighted out here. A lot of snakes. Rattlesnakes and bull snakes is mostly what we got out here, and also there's a substantial deer population. You got to be real careful because they're coming out of the cornfields all the time across the highways.
It's interesting that you said that, because I've had Bigfoot actually come over and turn over my deer feeder, which before he turned it over was full of corn.
Yeah.
And so they actually eat the corn. As far as that goes, they when they're not just as Kim said, they're omnivores. It's whatever they're creatures of opportunity, and it's really when you look, and so I guess that's what it takes, because some people say, oh, well, there's not enough food here to support a population of Bigfoot. If they can support a bear, it can support a Bigfoot. Y'all got a jillion bears up there. And so if it can support, because Bigfoot is adaptable. How in the world is something that's as big as what these things are, been around for as long as they have, and still they've managed to escape classification? Good Lord gave them a set of survival skills that we just don't quite understand, but they do, because they put them in use every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, northern states, what I meant, northern states versus southern states, and dietary. Do you think that that deer is basically the main staple of their diet, or do you think it's more vegetation?
Go ahead, Will.
Well, I know they kill deer. Like I said, they stole one of mine. I've interviewed about I think now 9 other people besides myself, and had other guys back there shaking their heads who appeared to have had the same thing. Where they actually, like I said, they steal their deer. They hunt them in packs. Me and my son one night were down there at Mercer Bio, right there on the edge of Sulphur River, and we heard a deer get killed. And this was a deer, when they run through in their alarm, they make this noise like that right there. He was running through the woods. He knew something was there. He couldn't find it. And every now and then we would hear some of the brush break going around. Then all of a sudden we hear something like it jumped out of a tree, and then you hear the deer, and then that's it. And then you hear the Bigfoot, almost like what you see on some of these other shows, just start going with what's called the pant hoot, and a lot of noise.
Oh
Me and my
yeah,
son actually
yeah,
got
yeah.
scared because I thought, man, I hope hope that's going to be enough to suffice them. Up there where Matt lives, like I said, one deer is twice as big as what we have here as a rule here in Arkansas. But they will, they'll do what they have to do to survive. And it's, nature's cruel. Everybody thinks, oh gosh, but nature's cruel as far as that goes. It's generally, survival of the fittest. And there's a line up the food chain right there. But
Yeah.
Often one of the topics that come up when you're talking about cryptid dietary is migration routes. There's all kinds of theories on all across the Bigfoot community on whether or not these cryptids migrate with the food sources or whether or not they are stationary in the same general area. So down there again, I have to point down to the south because it's such a different environment than we have up here and in the Pacific Northwest. Down there in the Arkansas, Oklahoma area, do you think that these cryptids are migratory with food sources, or do you think they generally maintain a certain territory? Because the weather patterns that you guys have down there are different. You
right,
guys, even in the winter, quote, winter time, you guys manage to stay, pretty stabilized with extreme colds or snow happening once in a great while, but it's not like here where we get it full force. So down there in the Southland, in Oklahoma and Arkansas and then Texas, um, where do you think these cryptids are based on migratory? Do they migrate? Do they stay in that same area? What's your thoughts and experiences on that?
go ahead, Kim.
I think I could be completely wrong, but I think so so my friend who lives out west, that's prairie. That is prairie. There's not a whole lot of lakes. I think that his migrate and follow the food and follow the water source because those creeks dry up. So I think that they do move. Mary, who's in Pennsylvania, I don't think that they need to move around as much there
Right,
because everything is
exactly.
available. So I think regional, yeah, they probably do. And then maybe in other regions they don't have to. At least that's what I've gotten because that's one of the questions that I ask everybody. Is there months that they're not around? And some people say yes, and those people are usually in, not in the woods. And the ones that pretty much have them all year round are, they've got cover, they've got water, they've got food. So, what do you think, Will?
I agree with that. We, the ones that me and Stephen have here, most years they tend to migrate. And as you said, Kim, I think it's because of the water and the food. You look up there and watch some of these shows in Africa. Once the water supply starts dwindling up, where are all the animals at? They're right there around that savannah and around that river
Yeah.
right there. I mean, you've got every animal that Africa's got laying right there on the same beach together. And so that tends to, that's what's going to motivate us as well, is just having the food and having the water. And they're very smart. I think most of the time, if they can, they'll stay where they are. They realize if they had to expend a lot of energy, it's not going to be, as efficient as what it would be otherwise. But they do tend to migrate. But again, if they don't have to, I don't think they're going to. We have years here. Man, we'll be finding Bigfoot like crazy and then finding tracks, and all of a sudden we don't find hardly anything. But I do think they tend to leave a sentinel out there. There's always one or two. You just find a random track every now and then. Stephen, I think, will agree with that right there. But then with him being a logger, he's up there in the foothills of the mountains and things like that. And with me being a UPS man, the years that I was down through there, all of a sudden there you start seeing, Stephen's actually seen whole troops coming down the side of a mountain like they're migrating back to their regular areas. I've seen the very same thing as far as the availability of the sign and everything else too, and as far as the skeletons. And then too, let me tell you something funny about what these things down here do. Where you have water and now the grasses and everything, these things years and just as recently as 2 years ago, they'll go and they'll get an armload of grass like this and they'll throw it up onto the road or onto the dry ground. And you can see where they pick through it, to pick through with crawfish, with turtles, with tadpoles, with everything else too. So they're very efficient. They're using this grass basically as a net to capture some of their food
Oh,
stuff. So
wow.
again, they're very, very well equipped with what they have right there. Even when you think, oh gosh, man, what can they eat? Well, they're going to survive. They may be like us, summertime. I've lost a few pounds here lately. Thank you very much. No, but I've lost a few pounds since it's been hot. And I think they tend to do the same thing. When you're wearing a fur coat all the time, something other like that, I think it's got to wear on them as far as that goes, and not just them, but also the prey that they prey upon. If the grasses tend to die, that's when a lot of them start being seen. I've actually seen them, the tracks going through a cornfield. Man, just amazing. I mean, I actually saw the landowner there, and he saw me stop and look, and I think he thought I was going to try to steal some corn, but he pulled up there and he said, "You admire my corn?" I said, "Yep." And I said, "I'm also admiring that big old trail going across. You got your cornfield there," because it wasn't there. I was there every day, and all of a sudden it was there. And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "The other night," he said, we heard something down here sound like a bull down here bawling." He said, "So I come down here to look around, see what it was." I said, "Did you see a bull?" He goes, "Nope." And he had a real a know-it-all smile. He wasn't being catty at all. He's like, "I saw something that I'm not going to tell you what it is, but we know what, I knew what he's doing." You can see where it came across the road there. You can see the trail where it actually snapped some of the trees to watch the stuff. So they're very well equipped with what they have. But I think sometimes you would find a body after that. But so far none has been found that we know. But then I don't know anybody that has enough money to get every bone or piece of skin they find and to send it to in a laboratory. It's not like getting a DNA test where you may pay $50. You get in that kind of DNA, you're talking at 500 or more starting out. And I just don't have that. As much as I would love to know, I just don't have that kind of money. I'm gonna chalk it up to Mother Nature sometimes, even though I may know I've got evidence right here. Sometimes I just have to take it on trust based on the other things that I'm finding that I'm pretty well right on this. If I ever hit that $1 million lottery, Jack, every bone I find is I'm gonna flood these laboratories here through America with bones. They're gonna be able to build whatever they want to, but other than that, right there, I think that's it.
I have heard. I just wanted to add. I have heard that people who have land or live out in the country, they've also noticed the same Bigfoot, uh, like staying in the area but rotating. They'll eat this section down, and then they'll move on to another section, eat it down, and then make their way back around when everything's grown back. So maybe they're like fruits and veggies. I don't know.
Keeping track of the resources.
Yeah. And even Keith Crabtree, talking about that same creature. I was talking to Keith the other day there, and Keith is well versed in Bigfoot. Like I said, he's the man who played the creature in the monster, the Legend of Boggy Creek. But Keith, everybody knows Keith, and he knows everybody. And one of the men who was down there, who was a caretaker, what's called the Cersei house that you saw in the movie where the thing was walking up there and she's got the kids. He talked to him the other day, and this guy told Keith, he said, "Hey, that Bigfoot that starred in this movie 50 years ago is still around." He said, "I saw him down the hill in the middle of the field." And he said, he's got the same.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. And if Keith says it, there needs on Bigfoot, there needs to be a gospel of Keith, because Keith really is versed in that. People share information with him that they don't share with other people, but he's that kind of. Oh yeah, but he's just that kind of guy. And he said, "Hey, that guy told me," he said, "that's the very same Bigfoot as the one that they had back there during the Legend of Boggy Creek." We don't know much about their lifespan yet, but for him to say that, and for this man, he's not just some random passerby and saying, "Oh yeah, that's it." No, he's actually lives there, and he's familiar with what's there, and he swears up and down that this is the same Bigfoot that was there from the Legend of Boggy Creek back in 1971. Do I doubt him? Not a lick.
Was it showing any sign of age? Like, was it graying or anything like that?
Yeah, he said it tended to be, maybe showing up a little bit graying, maybe not standing quite as erect posture-wise as otherwise, like we all do. But he swore him down. He said, "Man, that's the same one." He said, "I know it." So me and Keith are going to try to go here a little bit later on this summer and see what we can find. And if so, try to at least get a picture. But this man, like I said, with the connections that he has, but also with Keith's honesty and integrity, like I said, the real Legend of Boggy Creek is Keith Crabtree. It's not necessarily the monster, but Keith is still, but he's as honest as he can be, and he appears with us here sometimes. Very fortunate to have him, as a resource that we can speak with and talk to, and base on his experience and his contacts as well.
Keith Crabtree is not only a fine gentleman, but as far as we're concerned, royalty in the
Mm.
Bigfoot research community, and nothing but great things to say about him.